Can a relationship between two people become a spiritual trap? And what if dating someone of another religion isn't just a personal choice, but a decision that could change your eternal destiny? Does the Bible condemn this type of relationship? It might sound extreme, but listen to this. I've seen Christians full of faith, full of purpose, completely fade. And it all started with a relationship that seemed harmless, a love that slowly silenced the voice of the Spirit. That led them away from prayer. That isolated them from God's presence. And by the time they realized it, they were too far to find their way back. What the Bible reveals about this might shake everything you believe about relationships. No one plans to walk away from God, but many do in the name of love. You might never see love the same way after this. If this topic is already confronting you, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Maybe you're not here by accident. Maybe God is trying to warn you before it's too late. Now, let's get straight to the point that few have the courage to say. Imagine two oxen pulling a cart. Now imagine one is looking forward, steady on the path, while the other is turned in the opposite direction, pulling away from the route. The cart, it sways, veers off course, loses direction, and soon it breaks. This is the exact image the Bible gives us when it speaks of being unequally yoked in 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 14. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. This isn't just a random metaphor, it's a serious warning. When a Christian chooses to emotionally unite with someone who doesn't share the same faith, they're not just entering into a relationship, they're stepping into a spiritual battlefield. And before someone says, "But that's intolerant," stop and think. This isn't about looking down on anyone. It's about the eternal covenant God made with you. You were called to walk in light, in truth, in communion with the Holy Spirit. And when that journey is shared with someone going in the opposite direction, the imbalance affects everything. Have you ever stopped to consider what happens when a couple needs to decide whether or not to pray before bed, and one of them doesn't even believe in it? Or when it's time to teach their children about faith, and there's conflict about which religion to follow? Or when one wants to serve in church, evangelize, be involved in ministry, and the other thinks it's all a waste of time? Prayer becomes a monologue, purpose becomes divided, worldviews begin to clash, and all of this begins subtly. At first it's easy to ignore. Love feels strong enough. The affection, the respect, the shared dreams, everything seems to make up for the difference in faith. But the truth no one wants to face is that, over time, this kind of relationship stops being a connection and becomes a distraction. Now tell me, what if the love is real? Does that change everything? Just because the feelings are sincere, does that mean God approves of the relationship? That's where the most common deception lies. What many don't realize is that not all love is approved by God. Yes, you can be in love and still be in disobedience. Do you know why? Because the human heart is deceitful. It feels, but it doesn't always discern. It desires, but it doesn't always ask, "Lord, is this your will?" And I know that's hard to hear, but it needs to be said, because obedience will always hurt more at first, but it will save you far more in the end. Let me tell you a story. I once knew a young Christian man, full of faith, full of dreams for ministry. He met an amazing girl, kind, beautiful, intelligent, but she wasn't a Christian. At first, everything was magical. He would say, "She respects my faith," and it was true. But respect isn't the same as sharing. And little by little, things began to change. He still prayed, but less. He read the Bible, but with less passion. He stopped going to church as often. After all, he wanted to spend weekends with her. And every time she walked into the room, he would close his Bible. She won't understand this, he thought. And without realizing it, the light of the Spirit began to fade, slowly, until he no longer noticed. Not because she pulled him away, but because he chose to love her presence more than God's. Have you ever seen this happen to someone? Or felt your own faith grow weaker because of a relationship? Comment below, "I saw this happen," or "This almost happened to me." I want to read your story and pray with you. And now, maybe you're asking yourself, "But what if I'm already in a relationship like this? Does God condemn me?" The answer is no. God doesn't condemn you. He loves you, but he wants to open your eyes. Because worse than making a mistake is staying in it out of fear of fixing it. God doesn't want to destroy you, he wants to restore you. If you're in a relationship with someone who doesn't share your faith, now is the time to ask the questions that hurt, but save. Does this person draw me closer to God or push me away? Am I praying more or less since this relationship began? Am I still pursuing my calling, or did I set it aside to please someone else? These answers don't need to be said to me. They need to be said to God and to yourself. So what should you do now? The first step is to pray. Don't pray asking God to change the other person. Pray asking for wisdom to understand what He wants from you. James chapter 1 says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, and it will be given to him." Then, seek spiritual counsel. Mature leaders in the faith, people who can guide you based on the word, not just opinions. Evaluate the fruit of the relationship, not by feelings, but by signs. Are you stronger spiritually since you entered this relationship, or weaker? Do you still feel the same hunger for God? And if necessary, be brave. Brave enough to obey, even when it hurts. Brave enough to walk away from what's pulling you off track. Brave enough to put God back at the center, because there is no obedience without sacrifice, but there's also no glory without the cross. Proverbs chapter 3 reminds us, "Acknowledge Him in all your ways, and He will make your path straight." God makes the path straight, but only when we recognize we've gone off course, and that starts with a choice. Your choice. Maybe you're living this exact dilemma right now. Maybe you're trying to convince yourself it will work, even though the signs say otherwise. Maybe you've been waiting for a word from God, and this might be your answer. And what if I told you that the pain of a breakup might actually be the freedom that makes room for a new season, a season of healing, of new beginnings, of alignment with heaven? Because God doesn't want to see you in a relationship that draws you away from Him. He wants to see you in a covenant that glorifies His name. And that only happens when both people walk in the same direction, spiritually, emotionally, and eternally. But now I want to hear from you. Does this speak to your life? Have you been through something like this? Or do you know someone in this kind of relationship who needs a wake-up call? Comment below with the phrase, "I don't want to drift away from God," if this message spoke to you. Or write, "I'm going through this right now," if this word personally confronted you. Be honest, because sometimes the comment you leave is the answer someone else needs to read. You need to understand something. God is not against love, but He will never bless a relationship that pulls you away from Him. Is that hard to hear? Yes. But it's freeing, because true love must walk side by side with truth. And the truth is that being unequally yoked isn't just an emotional incompatibility. It's a spiritual prison that will cost you far more than you realize. Maybe you think you can balance it all, that it's possible to love God and still maintain a relationship with someone who doesn't walk with Him. But the word is clear. And when the Bible condemns being unequally yoked, it's saying, you weren't called to live divided. The Christian faith is not up for negotiation. Now answer me this. How far would you be willing to go for a feeling? Would you give up your faith, your intimacy with God, your principles? The kind of love that asks this of you, it doesn't come from heaven. And if it doesn't come from God, do you really want to keep feeding it? Love without a covenant with God turns into confusion. It becomes guilt. It becomes a silent burden that slowly cools you down. You start justifying what you once called sin. You start compromising truth. And before you realize it, you're living a life you never imagined. And why does this happen? Because obedience is never comfortable, but it was never optional either. The Bible doesn't say feel free to follow the commandments. It says, if you love me, keep my commandments. Obedience is a proof of love, not just a religious gesture. I know all of this may be stirring something inside you right now. Maybe you're in a relationship like this. Maybe you're thinking of starting one. Maybe you believe you can make it work your way. But does your way save? Or is it just another attempt to avoid the spiritual confrontation that God has already begun inside you? If this challenged you, comment below, "I choose the truth," or "I was moved by this message." That could be your first step in publicly declaring that you want to put God first. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you was touched. Maybe it was conviction, maybe clarity, maybe finally, the answer you've been silently asking God for. And if your heart burned, if you felt the voice of the Spirit speaking to you, then don't ignore this moment. God is not against love. He is for truth. He wants to see you living something real, pure, something that draws you closer to Him, not something that silences your faith. Because being unequally yoked isn't just a difference in beliefs, it's a difference in direction. And when each person is walking a different path, what was meant to be a covenant turns into a prison. You are not alone in this journey. There are thousands of people facing the same dilemma, and what you do with this word today can completely change the course of your spiritual life. If this message spoke to you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Here, we go deep into truth, even when it hurts. because truth sets you free. And comment below, I love the Bible, if you stayed until the end and recognize that the Word still has the power to transform lives. And right now a video is appearing on your screen that will challenge you even more. Is listening to secular music a sin? What the Bible says will shock you. Don't skip it. Click and keep seeking the truth with us, because those who love God aren't afraid to go deeper. See you there.